So like I said, I just read your first book. And so for people that want to get into screenwriting, but they don't even know where to get an idea from, what is your advice to people on how to generate ideas? I thought there was some really good stuff in the book. I was wondering if you could share that.
Gosh, you read the book more recently than I.
Fair enough.
A couple of years ago, we released the 20th anniversary edition. Now I rewrote it for the 20th anniversary. So let's see. Well, let me do it this way. What do you remember that I said in the book that stuck with you? And then I'll expand on that. I'm not trying to dodge the question, but what did you remember reading in the book? You thought, oh yeah, that's a good way to do it. I haven't thought. Was there anything like that?
The two that stuck with me or that stood out to me most was one was news headlines. And it's not necessarily like reading the news story and be like, I'm going to make a screenplay of this news story. It's reading the headline and then coming up with the story that could map to that headline in your head and then writing the screenplay based on that. I think it was The Karate Kid or something was similar to that, where he read a story and that's how they came up with that one. And the other one was to take two movies and or two movie ideas or something like that and combine them. Or if you're watching a movie, you think, well, what if they did this instead? And kind of letting popular movies, but putting your own spin on popular movies is another way to generate ideas. And I know obviously some of them is personal stories, but that can be a fine line to walk between telling an engaging personal story versus a story you think is engaging because you actually went through it. But those are a couple of the ones that stood out to me from just reading the book.
Yeah, that's great. In fact, you can combine those too. You can take two headlines from two different sections of a newspaper and that seem absurd putting them together. But you want sort of absurd. When you're brainstorming, you don't want to edit as you go. Just, okay, so, or, if you say, well, I loved Godzilla versus Kong, and I loved Mayor of Easttown. Those are just, okay, I'm not exactly embarrassed. I wanted to see, first of all, I didn't see it in a theater. It was one of the first ones I played, but I said, I got to see what they're doing with Godzilla and King Kong. And I saw him. It wasn't pretty if me. And I loved Mayor of, that's a HBO miniseries with Kate Winslet. And that's a very, very dark, it's actually a murder mystery, dark, but it really digs deep into the characters and the problems they have and the pain they're going through and their history and so on like that. So there's opposite as I could come up with. Okay, so put those together. Well, first thing that comes to mind is I don't remember off the top of my head a murder mystery tucked inside a creature feature, a horror film, And if you just said that, if you just said, well, what if someone was investigating a murder and the more they investigated, the more they thought, now this is horror films have done this, of course. Then they find out it's a vampire or something like that. But there might be a different way to go with it if you did that. Or what about an animated film? About Godzilla solves the murder. Now those are two of the worst ideas you've probably ever heard. But that isn't the point. Is to start brainstorming, and maybe none of that would go, or maybe I'd forget Godzilla altogether and say, "But I love murder mysteries, so what could be different there?" So yeah, that's it. And another thing you can do is if you can't start with a log line, start with a character. In other words, say, okay, what character can you think of that would be really fun to explore? We say, well, I've always wanted to dig deeper into, somebody who works on a road crew, that drives one of those things that, with the big rollers that does that. I don't know what made me think of that either. I'm just brainstorming. But if that's what you wanted to do, then just say, okay, why does that character interest me? What is it I'd like to look into? What about their life? And then what you always want to do if you start with character is say, okay, what is the biggest obstacle you could put in front of that character? Meaning, and to do that, you're going to have to figure out what is the goal that character is going to pursue in this. So what if it's that guy and his daughter wants to get married? It's going to cost a lot, and the man she's going to marry is somebody who comes from a very wealthy family. Now that's been done before, not necessarily about somebody who drives the cement truck, but anyway. You do that. So start with a character that you want to explore and then just start brainstorming well, what might a goal be? But more than that, what obstacle would you want to throw in that character's path? And another way you could do it is, you could do the opposite. You could say, what is some really horrible thing that might happen to somebody that would be emotional? Because emotion, which you're trying to create, grows out of conflict more than anything. So just a what if, let's see, I'm trying to think of, I'm trying to avoid like disaster movies, but what if a book club discovered one of their members was a serial killer? Okay, the serial killer is kind of tried and true and cliched. But what I mean is you don't know who the character is going to be at all. You just know the situation or the obstacle. What if there was a vampire? What if there was this monster? What if there was this kind of killer? What if there was a love triangle? Whatever. And then you figure out, okay, this is what I want to explore. This is what the goal is going to be, like that marriage. What if you wanted to write a story about rich guy, working class woman, upper class guy, or whatever? Okay. Then what you want to ask yourself is, okay, to come up with a character, ask, for whom would this be the most disastrous thing that could happen? In other words, you've got this idea for a conflict. So if the someone to win a bet has to marry, has to be able to get proposed to within X amount of time. Don't do that. That just sounds like a really, really bad, rom-com or something. But if you said that, well, you probably say, well, either you don't want it to be somebody really rich, because it'd be easiest to get a proposal because you could just run into a gold digger, or maybe you do want it to be somebody rich because they can't accept a proposal from anyone who's not working class. Now, I'm just going to town taking up, you might want to cut some of this out of the podcast, but this is sort of how you do the process. It's just you keep asking what if. You start with any one element of the story you're pondering, and then just say, what would be the other elements of character, desire, conflict that you could come up with that would heighten the emotion?